On behalf of FICCI Arise, I welcome you to the second edition of FICCI Arise and Cambridge University Press webinar series around schools post-lockdown, the what, why, and how of this entire situation. On the onset, I thank Cambridge University Press for collaborating with us on this very pertinent topic. Established in 1927 by the inspiration of Sri Mahatma Gandhi, FICCI became an apex chamber which represents the interest of Indian industry and trade. With more than 250,000 members from public and private sector, it hosts 84 expert committees with task forces representing 65 core sectors of the Indian economy. It mobilizes consensus amongst various stakeholders for advocacy of policy, regulatory issues, and sharing of best practices. It has been active in the field of education for over a decade and is the first non-governmental organization to suggest research-based policy reforms to the government. Now, with a manifold increase in the self-finance independent schools sector in India, with 43% of all of our students going towards private education, a need arose for policy advocacy as well as defining norms and standards for the sector. And FICCI Arise came into existence 4 years back. And since then, with its motto of students first, it has been actively engaging students both with the central and state government authorities to improve the standards and reach of education in India. I'm happy to share that FICCI, the subcommittees of Health, Skills, and Education Task Force are developing a scientific structure for conducting a detailed institutional readiness audit, which will cover all aspects of academic institutions, non-academic, administrative, and residential. And with these detailed indicators and rubrics would have been developed to cover all these aspects. We plan to launch this initiative next month itself so that it becomes easier for organizations to restart. Now, we understand this pandemic is an absolutely new normal for education, and we've really needed to reboot and retool ourselves. And everyone's feeling the ripple effect, all stakeholders. Now, before we go any further, I want to take a moment and thank teachers who've surprised everybody in the country. They've surprised everybody for the speed at which they have been able to adapt to this new situation, skill themselves up, and continued to reach across to their learners and help them carry on their education in these extremely tough times. While teachers have attempted to do this, UNESCO estimates that over 90% of students are still out of school because of COVID-19 closures. This represents 1.54 billion children and youth enrolled in schools and universities across the world. Now, we need to look at this and realize that this is a huge challenge. This is a huge challenge, and we need to learn from this as much as we can. As Winston Churchill once said, we should never let a good crisis go to waste. So the need of using this opportunity to learn can't be wasted. There is only one little story I would want to put forward. In the year 2004, I was visiting a school in UK, and I saw a rescue boat being taken up and down. And I asked the principal, why do you have this rescue boat going up and down? And he said, in 1911, when the Titanic sank, and we audited the sailors on board, we realized they were not adequately trained for rescue. And since then, we opened a series of schools in the UK where every week the students would take this rescue boat down and bring it back up. And this time we would make sure if such a crisis happens again, it would find us well prepared. There are learnings from across the world that we can cite, but what is for sure relevant for us is this is a time we need to figure out how do we reboot, how do we retool ourselves. So these were the background thoughts that resulted in this webinar series coming forward. So the what, the how, and why of schools post-lockdown will get discussed today. It is my absolute honor to be amongst speakers who would be addressing you today. And we are also hoping we would have an opportunity to take some of your questions to them as well. We have Dr. Abdullah Rashid Ahmed, Minister of State for Education from Republic of Maldives. Welcome to this session, sir. We have Dr. Joseph Emmanuel, Director Academics, CBSE. I welcome you to the session, sir. We have Dr. Bijoy K. Sahu, Chairman, East Zone FICCI Rise, Chairman, Sai International School, Bhubaneswar, and Advisor, Odisha Adarsh Vidyalaya Sangathan, in the rank of Minister of State, Government of Odisha. Sir, we welcome you to this session. We also welcome Lieutenant General S.H. Kulkarni, Member FICCI Rise and Director of Mayo College Ajmer. Sir, absolute honor to be in your company. And Ms. Preeti Hingorani, Vice President, Brand and Public Relations for Cambridge University Press. Preeti, also thank you very much right now for putting this entire thought together. This session will be moderated by Mr. Raga Podar, who is the chairman of West Zone from FICCI Rise and is also the chairman of Podar Group of Schools. Raga, before I hand the session to you, I would like our knowledge partner, Cambridge University Press, represented by Preeti today, to come forward and also speak to us. In your role, you've been working with governments as well as private schools across the world. And there are a lot of things that you've been offering to people for free just to enable them to tide over this situation. What have been your observations, or what trends are you seeing on rebuilding the equity that somehow has also been lost? Preeti, let's hear from you, and then we go to Raghav. Thank you.
Thank you, Aruna. And I wouldn't miss a chance to thank FICCI Rise team for being so true to their purpose and all the good work that you're doing. As you talked about the added audit, that is really, really impressive and something all schools would be looking up to. As Cambridge, yes, we've been working with as partners in education with governments and institutions. And I must say that we are completely aligned to the higher purpose of prioritizing equity and quality in the system, the way the government would see that. I usually come back with trends that we are witnessing. Of course, these are uncertain times. There is no one solution in all, but the trends are really important because they feed into the evidence that will come out and building a resilient education system going forward. So 2 trends that we talk about in context of equity is, one, we know that our students are studying in isolation. And the school learning system is much more than teaching subjects. So this isolation has also negatively affected them in many which ways for their mental well-being, especially when we look at the younger learners. Now, younger learners who are so used to structured play and guided reading is what they do in classrooms. And when we talk about our students in the higher classes, for them, the essential skills that are emerging is self-management, learning to learn, inquiry, and others, which we see as becoming really, really prominent in times to come. The most important part of the crisis, as you spoke about, is we're talking about deepening of existing inequalities. The UNESCO says there are over 1 billion students worldwide who do not have access to schools, and which many of them used to actually also go to schools. They were incentivized with meals, which has also become a measure of equity for many of the countries, including India, and I would say other countries like UK and more. And the learning activity for these students, if you look at it, is half as much of the learning activity, or maybe less than the learning activity of any other student who has the option to connect with their teachers and has been part of synchronous personal contact in some way or the other. We've seen innovation. We agree there is a lot of innovation, experimentation with learning models, new tools have come up, techniques have been applied, there are new issues, opportunities that are emerging, and we are observing the impact in students, teachers, and parents. So the training also comes in for social emotional needs. All this has been recording, and each one of this, and I must say each one of this is invaluable. And this is what is going to help us build those really resilient education systems. We're also conducting this research with a partner, Educate, and factoring in all these inputs, because this is the evidence that we will rely on in time to come. Like everybody else in this forum and in the world, I must say we all want this storm to calm down. At the same time, we as an organization have taken the responsibility to build a response mechanism for a resilient system, because at the end of the day, when I look at when we will tide over this, as institutions, as governments, we will sit and discuss that what works, what's the evidence, would it really, a teacher is going to ask, am I going to invest in these practices? Will this help my students in the classroom? There will be assessment systems that need to be developed that can take care of situations like these. So I would keep emphasizing this evidence is really important, and we all need to participate in this and integrate ourselves into different kind of research as and when they come out. The last one that I must say, that learning from today's situation. Let's look at how we've changed as a society. I am responsible. We are all aware that social responsibility has become so much key. We all do not want to pass on a disease to our neighbor, and our neighbor doesn't want to pass it on to us. We're socially responsible. We are very much aware. And the most important part is the society really banks on government preparation. It couldn't be more evident than this time. And the bright side of it is, yes, if we are aware, we're banking on our government's preparation, and we are socially responsible, how can we really harness that into our education system? How can we bring it to change the course as required? Cannot be done by one single organization, cannot be done by one single government. This is the time when we all need to come together. And that's exactly that we are doing, thanks to these forums. And what we see today is that we have some outstanding leaders from the government, from school education, who have made their time to come together and participate with us in this active dialogue. And also each one of our participants today who will be sharing their point of view with us now or later. And I'm sure this active dialogue is what is going to help us find that way. Yes, and I really thank Raghav for joining us to moderate the session today. I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Preeti. Thank you very much. And to Arnab as well. Wonderful opening statements that were so pertinent, thought-provoking, and engaging. It really sets the context for the rest of this discussion. To all the wonderful audience there, I tell you all namaste. Namaste for our foreign audience who may not know what that is. That's the way in India we greet each other. Namaste means namaha aste. It means I salute your existence, or I bow down to the divine inside you. So to the wonderful audience of especially educators and parents and students, but the wonderful educators who are watching, y'all are miracle makers. Y'all are the ones who are the backbone of our country. Continue working hard. Of course, there are COVID warriors on the front line, but y'all are the unsung warriors behind the scenes, because y'all are creating the future of the country. To the audience who was able to join in Zoom, great. You joined in the first 1 second, because we filled out our capacity in the first second itself of 1,000. To the others watching on Facebook, feel free to share, host a watch party, and share the good word, because we've got an absolute champion panel today. And I'm sure more people, more parents would love to be inspired, more teachers and educators would love to be inspired. So feel free to share. People sometimes ask me, FICCI Arise. Of course, everyone knows that FICCI stands for Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. But a lot of people don't realize that Arise is also an acronym. And the Arise acronym is more relevant today than ever in the history of FICCI. Why? Because Arise stands for Alliance for Reimagining School Education. We are in a world today, not only in India, all across the world, where we are all reimagining school education. Maybe because we are forced into it, but school education is going to emerge from this and arise from this. April and May was filled with a plethora of webinars. A lot of people had a lot of webinars. The difference at FICCI Arise, we want to have our webinars which are result-based, actionable, and solution-oriented. The ones that you can actually implement on ground and make a difference to the millions of lives of children who are entrusted to all of us. Now, the identity of India is built on the foundational blocks of its diversity. In a country where every 100 kilometers there are changes in dialect, costume, culture, and cuisine, it's an onerous task to be able to bring consensus among the various stakeholders on what the real problems are, what are the solutions to those problems, and further, what is required to achieve those solutions. Now, education is no different. Each school has its own identity, its own ethos, its own culture, its own values. the one thing unique about education is that everyone has an opinion on education. You know, if you were growing up in the 80s and 90s in India and you watched Sachin Tendulkar bat, for those of you from outside of India who may not know who Sachin Tendulkar is, he was the greatest batsman of his time, maybe the greatest cricketer of his generation. When he came to bat, a billion voices would be giving him advice on how he should have played his shot. Now, education is a little like that. Everyone has an opinion on it. And it's good to some extent because we welcome opinion. As educators, we want positive, constructive feedback because feedback is the breakfast of champions. The beauty, though, about education is that amidst all this diversity of opinion or divergence of thought, there's one thing that binds us all. That binds us all from whether you're in Montreal or a school in Milan, Mumbai, or Melbourne. The one thing that binds us all is we're all rotating around the same center of the universe, which is the student, the child. That's where our focus lies. Now, while the ways to achieve the goals may be different, no one differs on the fundamentals. Ensuring that each child entrusted to us can maximize their inherent potential and excel at what they are best in. To develop the values, ethos, and character of our students, of our children, to become responsible and compassionate 21st century global citizens. The other thing that we are all in the same boat. Arunabh spoke about the rescue boat. We are all in the same boat today. We are plagued by the same thoughts, same questions in our minds of the what, how, and when, and why. That's the focus area of our webinar series. When should schools reopen, school buildings reopen? How do we ensure the safety of our students? What measures do we need to put in place? And God forbid, even after putting those safety measures in place, what happens, God forbid, if a parent, a child, or a staff member contracts COVID? We'll be delving into these and many more questions with the champion panel later today. Educators, like most, love certainty. Academic calendars, we plan them for the entire year in advance. I was speaking to this one top prominent educationist, and he told me that, you know, in August 2022, I can tell you from now what I've already planned for my students. Schools and parents find this massive sense of comfort following these pre-planned paths. Yet the beauty of the world, the beauty of our lives, lies in the uncertainty. There is nothing certain about life except for the fact that we are all mortal and we are all going to leave this world one day. Yet we spend such large parts of our life trying to pin down our life into these boxes of certainty. We're preparing children for jobs that don't exist yet. They're going to be solving problems that we don't even know are problems yet by using technologies that haven't even been invented yet. We're preparing children for lives 20, 30, 40 years from now when we don't know what the next 2 years are going to look like. We don't know what the next 2 months are going to look like. So my appeal to all the educators and parents there is, rather than trying to pin down the life to boxes of certainty, learn to embrace uncertainty. That is where the beauty of life lies. Now, all these plans that we had all got washed away by the pandemic for the next upcoming academic year. What better time than now to truly espouse, breathe, live, imbibe those 21st century skills that we all once sagaciously foretold on the ramparts of the fanciest, biggest education conclaves of the world. And what were those 21st century skills we would talk about? Ability to cope with limited resources, adaptability, flexibility, problem solving, critical thinking, the ability to be a crisis manager. What better time than now to truly develop these skills in our students and also inside us? Every challenge is an opportunity. You heard that, of course, but only if you make use of it. This is the best opportunity that we have been thrust into to throw out of the window the negative, short-sighted, myopic outlook that believes, you know, that 2020 is a write-off. You know, this year's adversity, it's so much of crisis, so much of tragedy. Yes, there is adversity, but adversity has the ability to elicit talents that lay hidden inside us during prosperous times. It's normal to be afraid. No problem, be afraid, but have courage. Because courage is not the absence of fear, it is the conquest of fear. Fear is the dark room wherein negatives get developed. Champions are the ones who are able to conquer their fear Champions are the ones who have the tenacity to claw out of adverse situations. And with that, I would like to welcome my champion panel. We have a wonderful panel. My first speaker is the Minister of State for Education in the Maldives, Dr. Abdullah Rashid Ahmed. Sir has a variety of achievements. I was going through his profile and so many achievements. But you know, sir, what I love the most in your list of profile is that in his heart, he's still an educationist. Dr. Rashid has been an educationist for 30 years. He was a principal for 18 years. So for all of you educators watching, here's a living, breathing, live example for you. If you have dedication, passion, and commitment to your goal, where you can reach in life, you can move mountains. You have the future of your country in your palms. So Dr. Rashid, UNESCO says that the decision to reopen schools is one of the most sensitive subjects on political agendas today. The priority must be to safeguard the health and well-being of students and to build trust. Now, timing of opening school buildings is the most important thing. You open too early and you risk putting the health and safety of the public in danger. You open too late and cause too much of learning loss, especially for the vulnerable sections of society, causing greater inequality. Sir, please enlighten us with your thoughts.
Assalamu alaikum and very good evening and namaste. I'm really privileged to be a part of this wonderful team and also get the opportunity to address this wonderful audience. Previous speakers actually have highlighted very important points. As you all know, Maldives is a small nation, but government has given highest priority on education. Due to the COVID pandemic, our schools were closed since mid-March. As soon as schools were closed, we thought that we should provide education in different modality. As my previous speakers has mentioned, if we in this digital age, if we open our mind, definitely we can find solutions and different modes to provide education. We from Ministry of Education, we decided to provide education through TV, from national TV and some private TV channels. We created a brand called Teleclass, that is the Dive Award. From LKG to grade 12, we were providing education through TV, but then unfortunately from mid-April, Male was closed down and some islands are closed down, so teachers cannot go to the TV station to record the TV lessons. Then for a particular period of time, it discontinued. Then again, we thought still we should try to provide education. Then we formed a great team with about 500 teachers and 50 coordinating schools and some facilitators. Then teachers started recording the lessons from their home, and they send the lessons for us through Google Drive. And from national TV, from another private TV station, we are teaching students through teleclass. At the same time, we provide training to the teachers how to teach through TV. And we got guidelines from UNICEF regional office, and even they have observed our previous TV classes, and they have identified the strengths and weakness. Based on their guideline and based on their observation, we made training for the teachers. Yesterday and day before yesterday, we provide 500 training for 500 teachers how to teach through TV. And also we provided them technical support, how to record and how to do TV lessons, all these. And then second part of your question, we are getting ready for reopening. As you have mentioned, Mr. Raghav has correctly mentioned, students' health is the highest priority and their education also cannot be compromised. Therefore, in order for reopening, we are getting ready. We are making plans, ensuring providing wash facilities, disinfection and communication procedure, different SOPs and everything. We are getting ready. We will not open the school unless we are ready. Once we are ready, we will open. Now, we are planning to open some at the first week of July, but we will open the school by dividing into different phases. In the first phase, it will be from grade 9 and above. Then we will see how the situation goes. And even after we open, students will maintain the physical distancing. Classes will be divided. Suppose if there are 30 students in a class, then this class will be divided into two. Either they will be coming alternative days or they will be coming in two different sessions. So a lot of preparations are going on from the government of Maldives. We are getting ready for the reopening. And one more thing I want to highlight, in the Maldives, from government of Maldives, we have distributed tablets for all our students except grade 1 and 2. So all of them have tablets, and we are teaching through Google Class also. And these TV classes are combined with Google Class. TV lessons, the activities are given their respective teachers through Google lessons. So we believe that we are trying our best to continue education in this difficult time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rashid. That was wonderful. And it's absolutely amazing to hear that you have actually distributed tablets to all the classes of all your students, except for standard 1 and 2. Thank you so much for enlightening us, sir, and inspiring a lot of educators there. Our next speaker doesn't really need an introduction, especially if you're a CBSE school. You already know of our Director of Academics of CBSE schools, Mr. Joseph Emmanuel. Sir, one of the key factors that are required to bring great academic learning and to get the child's brain ready is those DOSE chemicals, those dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, which are basically brought about naturally when children run, play, dance, jump around, and remove that stress out of their brain. Right now, in a time where parents, where teachers, where students are stressed out, so what advice would you give to parents and students and to teachers that how do we continue to stay mentally healthy? And also, sir, if I can pick your brain a little bit about what are you thinking of in CBSE about the academic curriculum, about the syllabus for this upcoming year? What are your thoughts on that, sir?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Raghav. Thank you, Preeti and Arnab, for very beautifully setting the context and giving a detailed elaboration of the purpose of the conference. I also thank Dr. Rashid for sharing his country's experience in tackling the challenges of COVID situation in his country. As Mr. Raghav has pointed out, CBSE schools across the country is also victims of COVID-19. And all the schools across the country and about 25 foreign countries abroad, they are all trying to mitigate the challenges thrown by COVID-19 by getting into distant learning as well as connecting with the students in whatever way they can. With a vast country like India, we have very, very different socio-economic background. We have schools in very big cities. CBSE schools are also there in middle segment cities, and schools are also there in the remotest part of the country. 5 states, Delhi, Chandigarh, Andaman, Arunachal and Sikkim, all their schools are affiliated with the CBSE. All the government schools are with the CBSE. So I salute all the schools and educators and educational administrators. They are all sung into action and they all started connecting with their students, empowered their teachers. To a large extent, irrespective of all the limitations, all the schools were able to connect with their students and teachers through different modes of communication channels available with them. CBSE immediately on announcing the lockdown has intimated all its affiliated schools that we will not burden the schools with a heavy loaded curriculum. We have immediately announced that CBSE will be coming out with a rationalized curriculum for the board examination 2021. Rationalized curriculum, we mean that instead of heavy content-based learning, we should move on to concept-based learning. Without losing the importance of concepts, the children should be able to understand the objectives and purpose of learning the topics and concepts. And based on different alternative ways of academic strategies, they should be able to achieve the learning goals. NCRT, the sister organizations of CBSE, has already come out with alternative academic calendar, wherein focus has been given for experiential based learning in the classroom and at home. Instead of teacher-centered education, the focus has been given to child-centered education. But still, challenges are there to reach out to the last child in the country, where socio-economic problems are not allowing us to reach out to the remotest part of the country. So the government has already come out with different strategies. The Diksha platform has been strengthened. The open resource materials are available in Diksha platform. Anytime, anywhere, this facility is freely available. Also, government has already announced that 12 dedicated channels of Swayam Prabha will be airing dedicated programs for class 1 to 12. Immediately, the programs are already chalked out. There are also motivation given to teachers in government schools and private schools in the remotest part of the country to stay connected with their students through mobile phones. We have mobile phone reach up to 92% all across the country. And wherever mobile phones are not available, peer learning from the community, all those resources are being mobilized at school level. So the purpose is, because of the social difficulties, the social challenges, economic conditions, no child should be suffered, and that will be our effort, earnest effort, and mitigate the difficulties of teaching and student communities. The assessment strategy is also being developed to mitigate the stress level of the students. CBSE has immediately announced that there will not be class 10 examination for the students. And class 12 examinations, after giving sufficient time, the board will be conducting class 12 examination for the remaining subjects where the examination was not taking place earlier from 1st July onwards. And here also, the students' interest, safety, they are all paramount importance. All the examinations will be conducted from the home school of the candidates itself. They may not be there is no need to go to any other examination center. All the students will be allowed to take part in the examination from their own school, so that the schools can take adequate precaution for keeping distances, social distancing, safe distancing, and whatever precautions are required for the health and safety of the children, that can be taken at school level. Also, those students who are away from the schools, those who were living in hostels, they have been given the opportunity to appearing in examination from the place of stay. If they have moved to their home's district, they can immediately register when the portal of CBSE will be opened. Accordingly, the exam center will be allotted at a place near to their homes. So there are several measures initiated by the board to reduce the stress level as well as to facilitate the children. And also, it is very important to safeguard the emotional interest of the children as well as teachers, while giving adequate empowerment to the teachers by training them in the new way of teaching and learning. Suddenly, pandemic has thrown a new challenge as well as opportunity through distant way of learning. And in fact, all these children, all the students now has adopted the new norm, schooling from home. Though it is not an alternative to the classroom learning, it can supplement the classroom learning to a large extent. So this is going to strengthen our education system a lot. Already open learning mechanism has strengthened the education system at different parts of the world, particularly the areas where economic resources are limited, and it is catering to the need of large population who are economically weak and who cannot afford a regular schooling. So in the same line, we can also think about adopting online learning as a supplement to the classroom transactions in the years to come. This will also help the students and teachers to adopt flip learning method. The objective is to empower the children through experiential learning and joyful learning, and ultimately make them as competent citizens in the later part of life. So for building a competent citizen, flip learning has its merit, its advantages. It will give a lot of opportunity for the learner to adopt self-learning as well as experiential learning and learning by doing. CBSE is also focusing on learning outcome-based education. Till now, the whole education system in India, particularly in the school sector, everybody was following this content-based learning. Whatever is there in the textbook, that is being taught, and the questions are asked. So this has been promoting rote learning in our system, and there has been a deliberate attempt to move away from rote learning to competency-based education. The real competencies of the child should be identified, nurtured, and brought out, and he should be able to achieve higher level in later part of life, and he should be able to take part in the society making in a very productive manner. And we should be able to realize the dreams of our citizens, our young citizens and students. That is the very purpose of competency-based education. We need to move miles and miles towards that direction. We need support from all our schools, all our educators, all our stakeholders, understanding of the concept of competency-based education, the importance of empowerment of citizens, the empowerment of the school system, the teachers as a whole. So by creating an enabling environment, we should be able to achieve these competency-based learning strategies immediately. CBSE has already announced changes in the assessment strategies by inculcating case-based questions as well as competency-based questions in the board examination. We have already initiated the process of transformation, and this transformation should be percolated down the line from class 1 nursery level onwards, so that the learning objectives can be achieved from the beginning itself. So nurturing of the children in the right way and identifying the right talent at the right time, that should be the new norm. So we are working very, very hard. We are hand-holding our teachers. CBSE has already trained more than 1 lakh teachers after announcement of the lockdown through online mode. More than 1,10,000 teachers have been already trained. So this is a massive exercise. We continue this process with the help of experts and the stakeholders and schools. This momentum should continue. So by empowerment and creating an enabling environment, the transformation should happen. And through this transformation, even the challenges thrown by the pandemic can also be mitigated and addressed. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir. That was very, very enlightening, inspiring, and so nice to hear the innovation and the progressive thought from CBSE, because, sir, as a country, or the Asian system of education is just so dominant on testing and marks, and the country is running behind marks and chasing marks all the time. But really, education is about building competency, like you said. And I must let the audience know that sir is one of the most innovative people, because he was also one of the key drivers of getting e-affiliation done in CBSE, which has made all our lives a lot easier. So thank you, sir, for that. So a lot of questions are coming to you, but I'm going to quickly ask a question to Dr. Rashid first. Sir, there's a question from Kusum Dikshit, who asks, government is announcing or planning to open schools in July, but parents and children are not mentally prepared for this. How can we prepare them? There was a study done, a survey done in US where they asked parents, will you send your child back if schools open in the fall? and 60% said no. The same thing with India. It's about 50 to 70% of parents who don't feel ready yet to send their children to school buildings in July or August. So how do you feel we can mentally prepare our parents, and not only the parents, but also the teachers who need to be there for the students at this time? Dr. Rashid, sir.
Yes, thank you so much. I can say it's a very good question. As I said, it's just plain. If things are going as it is going now in a contained manner, then we are planning to open. Then your question, how parents and students would be ready, whether they would go. We actually, from Ministry of Education, we have started a Coming Back School campaign, explaining the parents and our stakeholders what are our plans and our procedures and precautionary measures, and everything we will explain. Definitely, students' health is our first priority. We will not compromise their health. And there is a technical committee comprised of doctors. Actually, they are making the decision. They would say, okay, you can open in July, or you can go with these key states, these grades. We will follow our doctor's advice. They are very closely monitoring the situation in the country, the whole country, based on the advice given by our technical team. The Ministry of Education, by discussing with the stakeholders, will make the final decision. We haven't made any final decision, but we are planning. If the situation goes in this way, by dividing into different phases, we will open. So once again, we are creating awareness and informing our stakeholders the precautionary measures, our process and our procedure, how we are getting ready to reopen the school. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Rashid. Very, very enlightening. Dr. Joseph, there are a lot of questions coming up, but I'm going to take one from Rashi Dua, who asks, sir, can this year not be written off as far as academics is concerned, and instead the schools emphasize on developing life skills in children? What's your take on this, sir?
Certainly, the purpose of education is all-round development. We are also aiming for holistic education. That has already been laid down as priority of the Central Board of Secondary Education. Life skills and values, in addition to the normal academic achievement, that is very important to be successful in real life. So overall development, holistic development will only coming from the development of all three elements of the personality, the head, hand, and heart. The life skill needs to be nurtured in school days, and there are so many initiatives from the side of the Central Board of Secondary Education towards that direction. All these student enrichment activities, and currently the sports integrated education, art integrated education, the assessment in the class 10 and class 12 examinations, the core scholastic areas, if we do and follow all the process systematically, naturally the life skills will also be developed in our children. And for that, the teacher should be empowered how to nurture those skills and abilities in students. Life skills and values are integral part of our system. So when we move from this content-based learning to competency-based learning, competencies as embedded in the as envisaged in the life skill and value aspects will also be naturally developed in students.
Thank you so much for that, sir. Very, very enlightening. I know there are hundreds of questions still waiting to be answered, but of course we'll try to get to as many as we can. Dr. Emmanuel, thank you for being here with us. I know you have another meeting at 4:45, and I have stayed true to the time. If you can stay, we would love to have you, but if you do have to leave for another meeting, we totally understand that. And thank you so much for enlightening not only me and FICCI Arise Group, but the variety of audience in thousands and 10,000s who are listening to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. I'll be here for another 5 minutes, then I will leave.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is the chairman of the Sai Group of Schools. He's also the advisor to the government of Odisha with a mission to establish 314 CBSE English medium schools, one in each block of Odisha. I must also say here that I have in Mumbai stolen the cyclone from his side of the country to our side of the country. Dr. Bijaya Sahu, it's a pleasure to have you here, sir. Sir, one of the biggest concerns about virtual classes and about these virtual lessons that a lot of schools are having is that it increases inequality, people say, between those who are able to access these virtual classes and those who don't have access to it. Now, we know that a lot of state governments have done a cavalier job and put classes on TV, like Dr. Rashid also said. So what do you think? What else can we do to ensure more equity in the different sections of society, where even those in remote areas can not have learning loss beyond a limit? So what's your take on that?
Thank you, Raghav, and namaskar to all our viewers. That's how we greet from the eastern part of India, and those who are from overseas. In the western side is namaste, and the eastern side is namaskar. That's the only difference, but meaning is the same. Thankfully, this year the cyclone has moved to west, but I hope all of you are safe, healthy, and I pray that all of us in India and all the viewers who are listening to us or seeing us are all safe and healthy. And I also pray for all of them. Thank you, Raghav, Preeti, and Dr. Aruna for setting the context of today's this webinar. And also, I am very fortunate to be amongst the panelists like Dr. Joseph Inamuel, Dr. Abdullah, and Mijanal Kulkarni. The topic is very, very eminent today for, schools post-lockdown, what, why, and now. So let me, answer that in your question to the last, but I will like to tell that this COVID pandemic has disrupted, every single life. I'll say it has also impacted not only the life, but also plants and every creation of, nature. This disruption probably is going to give us a new normal. That's what is the buzzword. And I was Googling out and I saw that the highest number of, clicks probably as on date is COVID-19. And next is new normal. So everybody is trying to understand what's this new normal. So I'd like to little elaborate on this new normal. While this pandemic has brought disruption everywhere and people are scared and people are fearing for life, but I see at the end of the tunnel a huge opportunity. And I'll prove what I am trying to tell, because I am very upbeat about it. World is not going to end. Education is going to be there, and education will come back much better, much wider, much larger, and much deeper. So my small presentation that I'm going to make will be divided into the impact, then short term, immediate term, what we are going to do, and in long term, the four stakeholders, that the students, the parents, the teachers, and the management. So how this disruption is going to be overcome, and we are going to see, as I said, a new normal. And at the end, I'll show something which will be the new age schools, how it will look like. So let me, share a small presentation. Is it visible? Yeah, great. So the impact of lockdown. The first let me take a minute on the impact of the immediate impact of this lockdown. If I start, is starting with the engagement, that the disruption of the regular engagement of our learners. I need not explain this. I'll just touch upon, because of the paucity of time, because I've been given over seven minutes. I'll try to touch upon whatever I am able to speak in this limited time. But this presentation will speak for itself. The syllabus completion is again, one of the most important probably impact. Assessments, now everybody is concerned about the assessment, the way the schools were being run. The health is another issue where, that's a concern for not only the school, but also the parents and the government. If we go to the teacher capacity building, teachers are not yet adapted to this new mode of online education and teaching. The mode of working from home for the teachers is absolutely new concept. Then the socio-economic development, the screen time of the children, the peer-to-peer interaction, the social skills, all this is absolutely new and is creating a huge impact. The last but not the least, but most important for the entire fraternity, a fee collection, which is going to impact the existence and the the running of the normal schools. This is, I tried to, so how, when the schools open up, how the schools are going to look like with, say, 30% of the students coming, the social distancing to be kept, how if the children are sitting, there can be a, how the, practices have been in the foreign countries, how you have to probably take the temperature, how you will allow children to come into the school after due checking. But getting this done in the larger schools or the high-end schools probably is practical, but I do not know how this can be implemented in many schools of our country. Now, the short-term measures that immediately we need to do is, I've tried to collect that and present in just 8 points. I know there are many, but I feel these are the immediate measures that's to be taken now, as well as when the schools are opening up. Upgrade school and technology infrastructure that each one of us has to do. Define safety, hygiene, and behavioral protocols. Train all staff on COVID-related and regulations. Digitize all admin work and the fees payment. Educate parents and students skills for survival on the pandemic safely. Restructure class schedules, curriculum, including digitization of the assessment process. Set up counseling sessions for the students as staff, as well as the parents, and stress management and anxiety management, and collaborate with health workers and help in contacting and tracing of COVID. Now, I have tried to, these short-term measures, I have tried to put it in 3 segments. One is the government regulations and the rightly model which will come. Health and safety guidelines each have to do with a deep dive, and the infrastructure guidelines that may follow when we are opening up schools. There may be a situation where it is a 30% or 50% students being allowed. Some students may come, parents may not allow children to come to the school, or they may come for a day or two, or in a week or in a month. Maybe the period, the 45 minutes period may be reduced to 30 minutes. The focus of the students and the special needs students, is to be seen. Health and safety guidelines, the cleanliness, thermal screening, hand washing, sanitizing, food and safety, collaboration with health officials, organizing sanitation and training sessions, these are going to be the futuristic guidelines. Infrastructure guidelines, improving ventilation, reduce human touch, labeling and creating safety, probably notices everywhere, safety zones, equipping a school with robust, well-equipped infirmary, multiple edges, classroom with limited capacity, developing hybrid models of learning. These, I feel, are the short-term measures which can make or enable our schools probably to start. Now, let me come to the major thing, which is long-term and which is positive side. Let me start with the student side on the learnings and how to convert this pandemic, COVID-19, to an opportunity. On the student side, I look at hybrid model to emerge out of this. There will be a combination of face-to-face learning with online learning, and there will be a flexibility of children learning process. There will be flipped classrooms, and significance of the flipped classroom will move from textbook to actual physical implementation by the children. The online and personalized assessments, both objective as well as subjective assessments, need to be done both as the physical mode is happening as well as in online, and we have to train our people on that. The education, as I was listening to some of my earlier speakers, particularly Dr. Inamuel, that from a teacher-led education, it will drive to a student-driven education. When this teacher-centric education will move to a student-centric education, and that is going to be the future of the school K-12 schooling system. These are some of the points I thought are relevant as far as the first stakeholder of the school system. Those are the students. The next stakeholder are our teachers, who are actual drivers. And for them, probably we need to retrain all our teachers into the use of technology and into the teaching learning process inside the classroom and in the online education. This is absolutely a new game. There need to be probably more of one-to-one mentorship between the teacher and the child. And this has to move smoothly into this newer mode of learning. Teachers have to also retrain themselves, as I said, in the new age assessment style, designing new tools for assessment, both online as well as offline, and accurately try to measure the learning gaps and try to give the remedial. There need to be probably by the teachers customized interventions for not a single size fit all approach as it's going on in the classroom today, but a learning based gap approach, child centric, and trying to cope up with that newness. So this is the second stakeholder, that's the teachers. Now comes a very important stakeholder into the entire system, is again parents. Till date, parents' involvement in the school was minimal. And I always tell that the involvement of parent is inversely proportional with the age of the child. The parents are involved more rigorously with the school when the child is up to say class 3, 4, from the pre-primary to primary level. And slowly as the child grows, the parental involvement reduces. But that will not happen now. And if that happens, learning will be difficult. Training of the parents will be paramount now, not only in the technology, because parents are going to be supervisors. They will take the role of the teacher inside the classroom to the role of the parents in their houses. Because when the teacher is teaching online or trying to give a combination of face-to-face learning and online learning, there the supervision has to be done by the parents. So we need to train our parents and get greater involvement of parents. Parents have to also track the progress of their children and communicate with the children.
So we've lost Dr. Sahu. I think we've lost the connection there with Dr. Sahu. Sir, can you hear us? Okay. I think Sir's having a bit of technical issues on his side and he's got cut off. So thank you to Dr. Sahu. He's done a wonderful presentation. We've got a lot of questions from people who have asked to if we can share the presentation. Okay, Sir's back. Dr. Sahu, can you hear us? I don't think so. So we'll ask Dr. Sahu, can you hear us?
I'm able to hear. Yeah.
Okay. Please finish up, please.
Yeah. Sorry. So the last stakeholder is the management. Here, the management side, I find 5 very important changes that the management need to look at. One is the financial, looking at the costs, looking at the budget, looking at the technology cost that's going to be, looking at the health and safety cost that's going to be, and reframing their financial budget and implementing that. Human resource, call the team that can permanently work from home or retrain the human resource. The cost that's going to be on the technology, bringing is newer technology and intervention of technology into the education. Parent and student satisfaction index needs to be created, and management has to keep a deep dive into the parent and student satisfaction level. And the most important, the regulations are going to be very, very tough. And the management has to keep a tab, not only now on the regulations of the government, as far as the education, teaching, learning process is concerned. Now it is about health and life. So that is going to be much more stricter regulation and regulatory regime. How the future schools will look like, that's my last slide. I feel the future schools, apart from what we are running today, will have all these elements. And unless we have each of these elements in the future schools, the education will not be 360 degrees. So I'll not read everything because of the paucity of time, but all the elements that I have tried to collect is from that I saw in the last 2 to 3 months, seeing the best practices going on in many, many countries and also in our country, and trying to collect how the future schools will look like. So this gives an idea. And my last, COVID is not a challenge, but a new opportunity for school education in India. And with that positive note, I thank all of you for giving me the patient hearing and this opportunity to share my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Sahu. It's a wonderful presentation that covers all the aspects and all the different stakeholders, which is extremely important. We're getting a lot of questions of people who are asking if the presentation can be shared. So with your permission, if you allow, we will share it with the team later on.
Yeah, it can be shared. I've given to Samreen and it can be shared. I don't have.
Wonderful. So Samreen from FICCI will be sending it to all the people who are interested in listening to it. Our next speaker is one of the prominent educationists of India. He's the principal of one of the most prominent schools, which has, I think, hundreds of acres of a campus. Lieutenant General Surendra Kulkarni is the director of Mayo College, Ajmer. He's had 4 decades in the army. He's also received the highest peacetime medal in the armed forces from the President of India. Sir, one of the biggest worries of a school about, especially when you open the school building, is allaying the fears of all the different stakeholders. And Dr. Sahu already mentioned some of them, where you're talking about teachers and students. But the biggest stakeholder, one of the very big stakeholders here is the parents, who at this time are naturally going to be extremely scared and hyper for the safety of their children. Now, how are you going to allay children's parents' fears? They say that a teacher is like a second parent to a child. I would say in residential schools like yours, a teacher is like the first parent of a child. What are your ideas on how we are going to allay the fears and thoughts and anxieties of parents?
Thank you, Raghav and Arunabh and Preeti for setting the tone. I'm extremely grateful to Dr. Sahu for very swiftly and very succinctly covering all the major issues. So I'm going to now come down to the nitty-gritty of what this actually means on ground for a boarding school's perspective primarily. Now, much ground has been covered in the previous webinar and much more was said today as well. And many of the problems and issues that a boarding school faces are also common to a day school. I spoke about some of these on an interview on national TV last week, which some may have seen, others may not. But I will try and go beyond that now. I will begin by asking 2 questions which are frequently thrown about. The first and foremost is, when are schools likely to reopen? Now, for those who run schools, the heads of schools. That's not their problem. That's a government policy matter. What they have to be concerned with is an internal issue, that when will they be ready to open their schools? And all the things that Dr. Sahu mentioned, when will they be in place so that the schools can be reopened? So there are internal and external factors. By focusing on external factors, we are obfuscating the issue as heads of schools. Second point is, as you rightly asked, will the parents be willing to send their kids back to school or not? The important thing is that even before the pandemic, parents sent their children to us in boarding schools on the basis of one simple word: trust. We were the in loco parents for 9 months in a year. Nothing has changed after the pandemic has come. But there is one important difference, and I will tell you this in the form of a Russian proverb, which goes like this. It rhymes, "Doverye no proverye," which basically means trust but verify. The fear of the parents will only go away when they can verify that the schools have done what they need to do. Parents have to be shown that your safety and hygiene standards and arrangements are as good or even better than what they have at their own home or at their offices. Now, proximity and contact are the two primary sources of contracting the infection. So the likely places where these two possibilities could happen need to be identified inside the boarding school. So from the entry points to the dormitories, which is essentially a home away from home, washrooms, classrooms, assembly halls, dining halls, hobby centers, sports fields, offices, you name them, every single inch of the campus has to be mapped. A fresh look at infrastructure and protocols is essential. Awareness, training, and practice is needed for staff till it starts becoming a habit that they follow as a reflex. The boarding houses will have to become the hub of maximum activities, which can include some parts of academics, dining, co-curricular activities, etc. Even within the boarding houses, there will have to be mutually exclusive areas. This is very important. And our dormitories with lower occupancy capacity needs to be treated as a family unit. After all, at home, if you are living 2 or 3 or 4 people together, you're not maintaining social distance amongst yourselves. So therefore, wherever our children are living in groups of 2 or 4, normally they live in groups of 8 or more, but they will be brought into smaller groups. And after the prescribed period of quarantine, which today is 14 days, it may change with government guidelines. After the prescribed period of quarantine, this small group of 2 or 4 will be allowed to behave as if they are a family unit. Why is this needed? This is needed so that you can draw a balance between social distancing and socializing. There is a need for human contact. You cannot be offline from the world forever and ever. Now, at the school level, the map of the school will have to be redrawn for the duration of the pandemic, because the needs of health and hygiene must override the needs of administration. Therefore, other things which go with it, you mentioned, Raghav, the school timetable needs to be elasticized. And we are looking at it at 3 levels. One, the present situation when it's entirely online and people are at home. The second is a hybrid situation when some students have come and others are still at home. And the third, and this is an important point to note, that even after the children get back into the boarding school, there will still be some time when they will not get back to normal activities of a boarding school, which is mainly on co-curriculars and sports. There will still be a blend of online, offline activities inside the campus itself. The annual calendar of activities obviously also has to undergo a change. Now the schools that have started working on these issues, I said there should be a timeline, ought to be ready by the end of this month. Anybody who's begun his homework will be ready comfortably by the end of this month. But that is not enough. There is preparation to be done at home too. Just like our staff, the students will also have to be conditioned to the new norms. So a proper capsule needs to be conducted for parents and students, so that for them also maintaining the new health and safety norms becomes a reflex response. Then important thing is the communication with the parents. It has to be very transparent and very regular. And over communication is better than under communication. Now in this, it is important that a structured, multi-layered format must be used rather than a personality-driven one. This is where I think some of our educationists need to pay attention. It has to be properly structured. And then listening to and responding to feedback from parents is absolutely crucial. Because a boarding school has the capacity to actually be a safe haven in these troubled times. And the parents' fear of the Formite can be overcome by their faith in the school. And finally, an SOP that a school makes should be easy to understand and implement by the lowest functionary in the school hierarchy. SOP is as good as the weakest link we have. And then in the end, I would just like to quote the famous author Jim Collins: "We cannot predict the future, but we can create it." And as Dr. Sahu very lucidly put it across, that what are the contours that at the end of this, we are actually going to get a better education system than we have today. So thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to field questions.
Thank you, General Kulkarni. Wonderful presentation. I love the part that you spoke about trust. And trust is the most important factor between parents, between schools, that have to be there. Unfortunately, we live in a world where there's a lot of trust deficit between schools and parents. It's almost like as if the parents and the schools are on different sides of the fence. To all the parents and to all the educators here, please realize that if the center of our universe is the same, the student stands on two very important pillars. That is the parents and the school. If either of them go wobbly, then the child will fall. Parents and schools are on the same side. We are not on different sides. It is not an opposition and the ruling party or anything like that. We are all in this together for the student. So do realize that. To all the parents, that's my humble appeal to you. Dr. Rashid, so you plan to open schools sometime in July. You said for the 9th and 12th. There are different levels of preparedness one needs to have. So there's infrastructure preparedness, staff preparedness, pedagogical preparedness, and student, family, and society preparedness. Now, other countries, some of them are using, like for example, in Taiwan, they're using, in Holland and Taiwan, plastic shields around the students' desks. They're taking lessons outside the school building in Denmark. Teachers in Quebec are wearing these face shields or those visors. In US, in Montana, there are schools that are using those hula hoops, the hula hoops which children have around them to know what is 6 feet of distance from child to child. So what are you planning about social distancing? How are you going to manage that? Because at the end of the day, children are children. How much ever you do, they are going to want to run and jump. And initially, they might be following rules, but as time goes on, they may start taking it for granted. What are your thoughts on that, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Raghav. Very, very good question. As I said, we are in the planning stage. We will ensure that physical distancing is maintained. One thing we can do is we will change the furniture. That is the one thing, and we will divide the classes. If the students are 30, we will divide into maybe 3 beds or 2 beds, depends on the size of the classroom, and also parental awareness, students awareness, and teacher preparedness. After doing everything, once we are sure that we are ready, that we can maintain the physical distancing of the students, then only we will open the school. Before that, we will not. As I said before, from Ministry of Education, we have started a Coming Back School campaign. In this campaign, this awareness will go on. Then regarding the teacher preparedness, as I said, we are going to train all our teachers on online pedagogy and online assessment. Since our teaching learning is based on online at the moment, even in future, we open the school, we will not go for complete physical classrooms. We will go for blended learning. Part of teaching learning will go on physical classroom, and the rest will go on online learning. To do this, that actually Cambridge University Press is our curriculum partner. charge, they have given all the digital books to all the students in the country. So they have free access to all the books from grade 2 to grade 10. As I said before, then tablets are there. And we have 2 service providers in the mobile phone service providers. They have given free data, 5 GB data to all the students across the country and 10 GB data for the teachers. So we can say that by using all these, we can get ready. And UNICEF is working very, very closely with Ministry of Education to get ready for the reopening. Once again, once we are sure we are ready and everything is fine for the new normal, then only we will open. Before that, we will not open. Our team, we have an emergency response team in Ministry of Education under the leadership of Minister of Education. Daily we meet and check how everything is going on. Everything is going very well, getting ready for the new normal. Thank you so much, Mr. Raghav.
Thank you, Dr. Rashid. I'm going to try to quickly put in 2 more questions. Dr. Sahu, now a lot of countries are using age as a metric to determine which children to bring back into physical schools, in the school buildings. Now, India is a country like that. India is also thinking of opening maybe for the higher grades, 8th, 9th, 10th, 12th, maybe. Countries in Scandinavia, like Norway and Denmark, also use age as a metric, but they use the exact opposite belief. They think that a child in preschool will learn less than a child in higher secondary through online learning. So they are putting the preschoolers into schools first, into school buildings first. So what are your thoughts on using age as a metric? Is that a good metric? And if so, what age group do you think is good for children to rejoin the school buildings whenever school buildings can reopen after all the preparedness is done?
Yeah, thank you, Raghav. A very pertinent question. See, taking the example of the Scandinavian schools, as far as India is concerned, it's a very, very different situation, because it's like comparing pond with a ocean. See, as far as our country is concerned, 70% of the children are in the government school system and about 25-30% are in our public schools. And maintaining social distancing, understanding of the health and hygiene factors, implementing them in the school is going to be a humongous task as far as both for government as well as the private schools. As an experiment, I think in India, the older children who can self-develop the security and safety protocols will probably be allowed to come to school first. Then there will be a month or 45 days or 3 to 6 weeks of observation how the situation is developing and how the COVID management is being undertaken by the schools. And with that experience, probably it will slowly trickle down to the lower classes, because of the population, because of the number of students, and because of the class sizes, it may not be that feasible to bring in smaller kids into the school. So probably in India, it will be a different model where probably they will start with class 9 to 12, then probably from 6, because as such, there is an indirect notification that till 31st August, up to 10-year-old cannot come out of the house. That means indirectly that up to 10-year-old, that's up to class 5 almost, schools are not reopening till 31st August. So I do not know how things will evolve. A lot of thinking is going in MHRD. Today I think there was a meeting, and slowly I think in a week's time, the regulations will come out. But my thinking is older kids will be allowed first. Then schools have to be trained. Schools will train their people, own people, as well as the students and parents. And then that experience will be shared slowly into the lower age groups.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Sahu. There's a question from Jaya Khilnani, who says, even though the child is at the center of the education system, there's a huge gap between the teachers and parents, and both are critical in raising a happy child. The COVID pandemic has highlighted this more than ever. What can be done to bridge this? I think we need to realize first and foremost that our teachers are our gurus. We have a beautiful culture in our country where we say Guru Brahma, Guru Deva. where our gurus are like our gods. They are second to God. And the idea is that we have to place trust in them until and unless both the parents trust and put faith and belief in the school, and the other way around, the school faith and belief in the parent and in the child. There are a lot of parents who believe, no, my child may not be able to do this. He won't be able to do it. Who says that? Why have you not allowed that child to explore his potential? What will happen? What is the worst thing that happens? The child may stub his toe. The child will learn something. I'm not talking about putting him inside a school classroom if you don't feel safe enough. Of course, take your time and be rest assured about it. But even if it's in a virtual class, let your child spread his wings. Indian parents, I think, tend to a lot of time feel afraid of what their child is capable of. Oh, no, my child may not be able to do this. He may not. He will do a lot if you put that faith, belief, confidence in the child. If you don't have confidence and faith and belief in your child, then the child will definitely not be set up for success. He will be set up for failure. So with that, General Kulkarni, so last question to you. Now, God forbid, even if we do all the preparedness, we follow the SOP as we are required to, and we take care of all the measures that are required, given by the government or by the WHO or by the school has decided themselves. After doing all that, God forbid if there is a positive case from a student, from a staff member, or from a teacher or a parent, what happens then? For a regular day school, it's still easier to shut the school down, to shut the school building down. In South Korea, in a city called Incheon, which is just outside of Seoul, a 29-year-old boy went to some nightclubs which were close to the school district, and he contracted positive. As a result, the South Korea government closed all the schools in that district. So how do we sustainably keep school buildings open? Or do we think like France, who say that 70 cases came in the week after they reopened school buildings? So the minister said that, oh, that's inevitable. That's normal, that we can't help that. So in a residential school, what will you do? Because you can't really send all your kids back.
Yes. Firstly, as I said, you need to take abundant precaution. And this is coupled, as I said, with trust and verification by the parents. When this pandemic broke out and we went into self-quarantine as early as 4th of March, and before the Prime Minister announced his lockdown, all our children were back home in India and abroad. Parents saw what happened in those 2 weeks. There was a ban even on parents coming in. Even to pick up their own children, they had to be at designated places near the gates where we handed over the bags and the children to them. The parents are watching. Now, can anybody ever do this after I have a lifesaver and all at my swimming pool? Can I say no child will ever drown in my school? No. Can I say with all the hygiene in my messes, there will never be food poisoning in my school? Never. Right? But every single COVID case, people are behaving as if you get this coronavirus and it's immediately fatal. In many cases, it's very mild. And as I said, we are going to get in the children in a staggered way. So if once the kid comes in for 14 days and he's in quarantine, before he comes in, others are allowed to come into the same boarding house, then please understand that he's gone past, he's in that zero thing. Also, before the parents send their children home, let us say, God forbid, there might be a case. We will get them to do, as I said, we're going to do a 2-week program with them, and they will come with a COVID negative test. Now you'll say, while traveling from, say, Assam to Ajmer, it can happen. I agree. So at least it'll be easier to do contact tracing if there's any suspicion. Every case does not require, any suspected case doesn't necessarily require testing. Please ask the doctor. Every suspected case does not require hospitalization and ICU and ventilator. Please understand. And which is why I said, we are going to break them down into small groups of 2 to 4 people who will live together after this 14-day period. Even within the boarding house, there'll be mutual exclusive zones. Now, God forbid something happens. I mean, I can't, that is what God forbid is all about. I can't say it won't happen. Now, our track record will speak for ourselves. When this Lakshman Rekha was ordered, most of my staff still lives in campus. They were not even allowed to come out of their flats to come for a walk for about 2 months. That is the degree of imposition that we've done. Now, see, these are all reasonable precautions we can take. As I said, we have even gone down to calculating how many WCs we have in school. So at any point in time, we will not allow that many more students, to come in at least for a month or so that we know that by chance, because washrooms in are areas where children will be careless, they may pass on infection. We are not even taking a chance with that. So please understand, it requires a very, very thorough, as I said, redrawing the map of the school. But as I said, ultimately, the parents are watching us now for so many months, and of course, for so many years before these months. And they know, and at every message which I give them, I say, every decision that the school will take will be factor number one, child safety. And factor number two is parent confidence in that this child safety is actually being attended to. Beyond that, sorry, Raghav, I can't play God, I can't promise nothing can happen. It can happen.
Thank you, General Kulkarni, and thank you to all the panelists. It was a wonderful session. To all the educators and the parents watching, please, it's an appeal to all of you, especially to the parents, support your teachers, support your school, and to the schools, support your parents, support your children. Unless we work together, the child will fall down. We have to understand it takes a village to raise a child, and when we are united, then the child will truly blossom and reach his or her full potential. If we are not going to be united, unfortunately, that is what is going to infect the child, and that is what the child is going to learn. So please be supportive of your school, your teachers, and be the wind beneath their wings. While all of May was spent in holiday for a lot of people, a lot of schools and teachers were sitting and practicing hard day in, day out, getting the children, getting their own skills ready for when schools reopen in June virtually. Thank you to all the panelists. It's been engaging, thought-provoking, actionable, and result-based, solution-oriented. To all of you watching, please make sure that you use these webinars to actually benefit the students who are entrusted to you. The idea of these webinars are not just to come and speak here and you'll listen and say very good and go back. The idea is how can we benefit the students in each of our classes? That is why FICCI Arise, we have these webinars, so to impact the most number of children in our country so that they can benefit. Thank you to all the panelists. With that, I would like to hand it over to Dr. Arnab Singh, who, by the way, has the best backdrop for all webinars across this country. Arnab, over to you.
Thank you, Raghav. It's been a delight seeing you moderate this panel. There's a lot that I have learned. And Raghav has actually said everything that I was planning to say. But there is this, Raghav, when you were making your closing remarks, I remembered that as an educator, the most powerful day for me in the year is a day when new students come to school and their parents leave their hands and ask them, go, I will see you at home. And I'm sure for General Kulkarni, that would be when they would leave the students in his boarding house and say, fine, we'll see you when it is time for us to see you. So this trust is the basic foundation of any relationship that a school has with the student, and that trust is imperative between the parent body and the school body. I understand that these are difficult times, and there have been some gaps that have emerged between some parents and some schools. But parents, if you're listening to me, we can only do what we do when we have that absolute trust between all of us. And for sure, as you leave your children inside the school, we try to take care of them as well as you would have in your home. But just like there could have been a situation at your home, there can be a situation at school as well. Or we can promise to you from schools is we would do everything that you would have done at home to make sure that your child is taken care of. I want to extend my thanks to General Kulkarni, who was the most patient speaker and waited his turn in the end. Sir, thank you very much for being here today. Dr. Abdullah Rashid Ahmed, sir, I have attended a lot of webinars, and some of them have been with politicians and leaders, and I've never seen somebody this engaged for this long a time on the topic of education. I'm sure Maldives kids are lucky to have you. Dr. Bijoy Sahu, great respect for you, sir. The kind of work that you're doing, not just with private schools, but also government schools. is something that makes all of us aspire to do more. Thank you for joining this particular webinar. I want to thank Preeti from Cambridge for creating this opportunity. I also want to thank her for extending this webinar series. It was originally supposed to be series of two, but the feedback that we received was that while we're talking about schools reopening, but what is really reopening is the classroom and how the dynamics of that classroom is expected to change. So there are things that a teacher is expected to change in how they deliver their learning. So because of that feedback and assistance from Cambridge, we are coming up with the session 3 of this webinar series, in which we are talking specifically about classrooms. And we are going to be speaking to teachers and to wing heads who go into a classroom every day and how they are preparing their classrooms to welcome these learners whenever it is time for them to come back. I want to thank Raghav for moderating this panel, a difficult panel, I would say, where everybody who was a panelist is worthy of being a keynote speaker. And how do you condense your thought in a 6 minutes block is something which is sometimes very difficult. Raghav, thank you for doing that. We don't have Dr. Joseph Emmanuel with us anymore. He had to step out, but I thank him on behalf of FICCI Arise and Cambridge University Press for coming here and sharing what India's biggest central board is doing. And I'm sure what he's suggesting might actually become guidance for other boards in the country as well. We look forward to welcoming you back again on the 10th of June. Before I go, I want to thank people in the engine room, people who you're not seeing on the screen right now, but Ridhima, Simreen, Malika, people from FICCI Arise Secretariat and Cambridge University Press who actually made this entire thing possible. So till the next time we see you again, stay safe, plan ahead, replan, and then plans one more. People who plan have much lesser last minute to do when the actual action happens. And this time the action is with our kids. We need to plan the most we could have possibly planned. Looking forward to seeing you on 10th of June. A link has also been shared in the chat and would also come in through the email that we'll be sending you with recordings of this session and the PPT of Dr. Sahu. A lot of people have requested that, sir. So if you agree, we would send that PPT to our audience as well. And there are still a lot of questions that are unanswered questions. We try to take a lot of questions, but there are 168 questions that are unanswered. There is one opportunity still for you to be able to ask these questions. We can't promise this, but we are going to attempt this. If you go to our Facebook page and plant this question in the chat series of where we've gone live on this, along with my question is for this speaker. So if you give us your questions on our Facebook page, we would be able to possibly present it to our speakers. And if they have time, they can possibly answer it. So without further ado, it's been a long session, but I'm sure it's been a worthwhile session. Thank you very much for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you again very soon. You have a good rest of the day. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you.